Hello there, I'm Ngobani Zondo, and today is the 5th of July 2023. Here's a question I pose unto you. What do you do when democracy has failed? Because clearly, the Western style democracy has failed in Zimbabwe. We have had a countless number of elections which everybody knows are rigged, putting into place an autocratic government whose interest is not focused on service delivery or improving the lives of the general population, but however self-seeking interest for the sake of excessive rent extraction from the society and aligning the pockets of the few who are in close proximity with those that are in power. The perilous state of the Zimbabweans has been ignored by this ruling class, which I always say on these videos includes even the so-called official opposition. The so-called Chamisa Chete Chete mantra, by the way, I believe is a way in which the revolution or the desires of the Zimbabweans are arrested in this setup of having a supposed official opposition that pretends to be opposing a system that it knows that it will never dismantle. Chamisa and the lawyers at CCP, whom I do believe are lawyers for the gold mafia in Harare, know very well how the electioneering system in Zimbabwe works. We all go through the same process every election cycle where ZANU-PF pretends to be fighting in opposition. They go around abusing people in the villages, but at least this time around we are not seeing that level of violence. Do you know why? Because of the tacit agreement between the opposition and the ruling party to let the status quo continue unabated. You can see how relaxed our opposition is at the moment. You cannot tell me that is the posture of an opposition that wants to take over power in Zimbabwe. They are so relaxed knowing that the results of the elections are going to be contested because that is just part of the script, and we know at the end of the day things are going to die down and Idi Mnangagwa will carry on in power. And I do believe that the official opposition will get their pay for participating in this kind of act. It is unfortunate that most of the Zimbabweans are, for some reasons, whether baloyiwe or whatever, still do not understand or see that there is no official opposition in Zimbabwe that has got an intention of unseating Idi Mnangagwa and bringing about a true democracy in Zimbabwe, or rather a true salvation. I'm going to stop using a true democracy in Zimbabwe because one could argue that Zimbabwe is a democracy, but I'm also going to argue as well that the so-called democracy in Zimbabwe is flawed and it is a fraud. It is not serving the interest of the people. So the question still remains, what do you do when democracy has failed its purpose? The so-called Western style democracy that is embedded or relying on election as a system of choosing the people that must lead the country. How about if the election system itself is tampered with in the case of Zimbabwe, where the will of the people is willfully ignored by the political participants, and even the will of the opposing forces of Zimbabwe is suppressed by having the official opposition being hijacked by the ruling elite for the purposes of keeping the people of Zimbabwe under arrest in this kind of system where they think that they've got an opposition when in actual fact they don't have an opposition. Nelson Chamisa is not going into these elections with the intentions of saving the general population from poverty. No, he's going into these elections to fulfill a part of a script that he is given so that the status quo can carry on. Therefore, in Zimbabwe, elections are just an inconvenience that the ruling elite have to go through because they have to appease the international community that seeks election or that uses election as a validation of any government that is sitting in power. Seeing that the international community places a lot of capital in this kind of elections or electioneering, the ruling elite have been able to bribe, yes, to bribe the opposition into or coerce the opposition or incorporate the opposition into the elitist structures in such a way that the rest of the people of Zimbabwe will remain suffering and they will have no place to go. And even the mindset of the Zimbabwean has been cloaked into believing a lie that Nelson Chamisa Chete Chete will take them to the place of glory. When in actual fact, this so-called Chete Chete mantra, I always argue, is for the purposes of blinding the Zimbabweans so that Zimbabweans cannot find any other alternative way of removing ZANU PF from power and bringing true freedom and liberation to everybody else. So when they say chete chete, whatever other plans you have, essentially they have blocked them, and you are looking at Chamisa as if he's the only savior who's going to bring Zimbabwe forward. Yet that Chamisa has already been captured, as I am claiming. So that capturing of Nelson Chamisa and his willingness to join the ruling elite and forgetting the struggle of the general Zimbabweans and even the Zimbabweans forgetting their own struggle is the reason why Zimbabwe stays like this and nothing changing. It is surprising how everybody in Zimbabwe is resigned to the status quo that is been given unto them or where they find themselves in. Nobody seems to be willing or seems to be moving towards a change. As I have alluded, that the opposition and the ruling party are just one and the same ruling elite who are discombobulating the minds of the Zimbabweans who think that we are going this way when in actual fact we are going the other way around. Even the Zimbabweans themselves, because they are a peaceful, loving nations, they have resolved into this great resign or this great resignation that we are seeing in the country, where people are tired of politics, tired of fighting, tired of being arrested, and they've succumbed. They have succumbed to the uh, 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 to, to the oppression such a way as if they've accepted it to be the official status quo. People always talk about people always talk about the shackles of colonialism and the mind that is still arrested by the by colonialism, whereby we still think that as black people, the white man is the master and we are just the servants. In the same way, in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans have been conditioned into thinking that ZANU PF is the master, the elite, and they are just the slaves for ZANU PF. And therefore, Zimbabweans have greatly resigned from pursuing the dream of liberating the nation. I would like to send this call, therefore, to Zimbabweans to arise and shine, for your light has come. It is usually the darkest in the last hour, but I can tell you that in order for that to happen, you have to dump this Chamisa Chete Chete, because Chamisa is not the vehicle that is going to take Zimbabwe to a bright future. My name is Ngobani Zondo, and I am running to take the reins of power in Zimbabwe by whatever means necessary to set our people free from poverty and the lies of the ZANU PF doctrine and also the weaknesses of the so-called international doctrine of democracy, which only seeks to serve the interests of the elite. Not only the elite in Zimbabwe, but the elite globally. Perhaps that's the reason why the international community places so much emphasis on elections which they already know they are flawed, because the elite that are crushing the people of God are not just the Zimbabwean elite. They are also the South African elite. They are the African elite. They are the American elite. They are the British elite. They are the Chinese elite. They are the Russian elite. They are the global elite. So the global elite as a whole come together and support each other in this demagogy setup that makes sure or ensure that the people will never find freedom. Throughout history, the general population have been fighting the elite. Through the almost 100 years of 100 years of the Magna Carta, it was the general population fighting the elite. Through the French Revolution and the establishment of the unalienable rights of man, it is the general population fighting the elite. And they always keep their claws unto power, because that is who they are. It's the same thing in Zimbabwe and the rest of the world. So if you come to look at it, we are not just fighting the Zimbabwean elite, but the Zimbabwean elite, as bad as it is, it has got some kind of support. I mean, there's a word that I'm looking for. There's a support that they get from the international elite. It's not explicit, all right? The opposite of whatever word I'm looking for, I forgot it. The opposite of explicit. So there is no explicit support from the international elite. Is the support is there, but it's undercover. It's it's rather tacit. Okay, it's like there's a tacit support for ZANU PF by the global elite, even though they will be outwardly denying it, because that is how the global elite keeps everybody else under wraps. So if the Zimbabweans themselves, us as Zimbabweans, I think we are clever enough. If we are clever enough, we can bypass even the global elite. I like it that people are now speaking to the United Nations, speaking to UK, speaking to United States. But I know that the UK is one of the countries that wants Zimbabwe to suffer. Okay, and there is voices within the US Washington community that also wants Zimbabweans to suffer, me and you to suffer. That's actually their agenda. So we must be very careful when we approach these international people, knowing very well that they are not interested in setting Zimbabwe free. On the contrary, they have got some. There is a tacit benefit that accrues to them with ZANU PF in power, though they might never admit it. But that's the reason why when Zimbabweans go to the United Nations, go to the USA, to the UK, they find it difficult to find support. You will get verbal support, but there will never be real changes. There will never be a United Nations charter on the oppression of the Zimbabwean government, because the people in the United Nations, the politicians, benefit. Okay, this money laundering thing. I mean, we have heard about Hunter Biden's money laundering around the world. What makes you think that a government like ZANU PF, which offers money laundering to people around the world, what makes you think that the politicians in Europe and the politicians in the United States of America wants that money laundering machine to be dismantled? No, they don't. But the American system, the governance system, and the laws of America do not support the money laundering in Zimbabwe. But however, the corrupt politicians in the United Nations, in the United States, and the United Nations, and the United Kingdom want to keep the status quo like that because they benefit undercover. You know what I'm saying? They are benefiting undercover, but on the surface, they will always speak against the election violence, against the corruption, and all of those things. But undercover in secret during the night, they're having nice deals with Edim Nangagwa. That is why he is relaxed. Why would he want to get out of? Why would he think that anybody will remove him from power? Yet he knows in Zimbabwe he controls the military, which has got a monopoly of violence in the country. Nobody can violently overpower the military of Zimbabwe except if they've got arms. but nobody in Zimbabwe has got arms. They are peaceful people. So there's that monopoly in Zimbabwe. When you go outside the country, people keep on going to speak to UK, speak to USA. The very same politicians that you are speaking with, officially they are supposed to listen to you and push for an agenda that makes bring Zimbabwe change. But undercover, the money that they make, the real business of politics that they are in is not to save the interests of even the British public or the American public. They are there to save the interests of their own personal purses. So therefore, as public officials, they hear you Zimbabweans speak, they hear the point of which you are saying, okay, but undercover with their real job, why that American mafia, the British mafia, undercover, they see that no, we actually want it because we when we go to Harare, we go and wash our money. The Zimbabwe Reserve Bank is a money laundering machine for the politicians in the United States of America, in Washington, from the White House to the Senate, all of them, Capitol Hill, everybody is having fun. Everyone's having fun. And then they come up there, the American, American politicians, what they do, they have got this hair, the white ones have got a black hair with some gray lines, how the way they're all the same, the American politicians, all of them. Their hairstyle is the same. They speak perfect English, like they were all gave birth, they coming from the same mother, all of them, you know so it's just this presentation that they give to us as people that, okay, well, the political class, the political elites, that is just nonsense. Undercover, they're just thieves. That's what Donald Trump was elected for, to drain the swamp in Washington. So that swamp in Washington can talk but will never walk the talk. They will talk brave and say, Itim Nangagwa, the ZANU-PF government is this and that we are going to put Zidera. Zidera doesn't save the interest of Zimbabwe. The Zidera it saves the interest of the corrupt politicians in Washington who benefit from these black African poor countries. But we as Zimbabwean citizens, I want us now to rally around ourselves as Zimbabwean citizens and do something which is done by the citizens of Zimbabwe, which will hold accountable the people who are in political positions in the global west itself. It's high time we take a a, a combative stance against Washington and London. Okay, let me tell you what I mean by that. What I mean is that when we are going to Washington and engaging with the United States, because by the way, the reason why I'm speaking about the United States is because whether you like it or not, the United States is the superpower of the world. And therefore, nothing in the world happens without the superpower knowing and without the superpower giving its blessing. So, what you need to do is go to the superpower centers of power and begin to address the individuals who are there and begin to tell them that we are going to start investigating their private relationship with Itim Nangagwa and ZANU-PF to see that indeed they themselves are not corrupt. And if they are corrupt, we expose that corruption in the United States system. Yeah, I'm talking about accusing United States politicians for being corrupt against poor African countries like Zimbabwe, so that there can be a real justice, a move of justice can move within the American system, within the British system. And then when you go to Britain, go to those ex-Rhodesians who are busy having assets in Zimbabwe or laundering money in Zimbabwe through ATM Nangakwa and defeating them using the British system. Because in Britain there is a system of governance, there is laws. If politicians break laws by money laundering in Zimbabwe, it's a law, it's a crime even in Britain. So we need to start attacking those people one by one, because it is that coalition of people that are keeping us oppressed as Zimbabweans. So this is what I'm saying, that citizens of Zimbabwe need to take the issue in their own hands. Don't think that the Americans are going to come to save you or the British are going to come to save you. On the contrary, the British politicians and the American politicians are having fun, having sex, and big orgy with ZANU-PF. Okay, they're having a big orgy with ZANU-PF, big orgy with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. So the corruption starts there in the British Parliament. that corruption is there in the United States center of power there. That's where the corruption is. That is why ZANU-PF has been allowed to stay for a long time. And us as Zimbabweans, you have to be brave now. Don't fear white people. Don't see yourself as a black person and think that you are inferior because of they are white. I don't care. They are billionaires. They are white people. They have been in the US Senate or the US Congress for 20, 30 years. If they are corrupt, they are corrupt. Let's bring out their evidence and crush them there in the United States of America. Crush them there. Crush them. Those US politicians. Don't say, oh, I am a black Zimbabwean in America. It is their country. They are fucking up with your country. They are fucking up with our system. So we must attack those American politicians there in America using the American justice system, exposing them there in the United States. And that will lead the US Congress to be so embarrassed of its own members who are the reason why Zimbabwe is suffering. And they will be forced by the American justice system to do what is right, to prosecute their politicians in the United States, in the United Kingdom, who are in who are the reason why Zimbabwe is corrupted. And back home, we give ZANU-PF marching orders. We're not going to go further on how we're going to do that. But we're going to do what we're going to do. Whether the international community likes it or doesn't like it. The Zimbabweans are not international community. Zimbabweans, first and foremost, are Zimbabweans. What we do for the liberation of our people is up to us, by us, for us, not by the standards of the Americans. Because the Americans, I am prosecuting the Americans today. Because if you are going to go by the standards of the Americans, you will never go anywhere, because their standards have failed us, and they know very well that their standards have failed us. But however, they want to keep the status quo like that, because I told you that as an institution, the United States government wants a Zimbabwe that is successful, but the people, individuals within the government institution of United States might have some benefits, some corrupt benefits that keep ZANU-PF in power, and we need to address that. We need to face that. We need to fight that Goliath. We need to be brave about it. We need to be unapologetic about it. We need to stand firm and be strong. For salvation comes from Jehovah and not from man. Holy salute. Have a great day.